My name is Clay Clark, and I'm the visioneer and CEO of Thrive15.com. Today we're going to be teaching about the 4 humans that are involved in every commercial real estate transaction. You're going to learn specifically about the role of the broker. You're going to learn about the role of the tenant. You're going to learn about the role of the owner, and you're going to learn about the role of the investor. And as a little bonus, you're going to learn about the commercial property manager. In my own life and business, I know that I have engaged in multiple stupid real estate transactions. I know that I have leased space from terrible people. I know I have partnered with people to buy properties I shouldn't have bought. I know for me, it's been a minefield of issues. And Braxton Fears is going to help me and people like you hopefully straighten this out so that we don't find ourselves leasing space, buying space, and getting in bad real estate transactions that are going to cost us a lot of money. Remember, at Thrive15.com, we all come together and believe that knowledge without application is meaningless. So as you're watching today's episode, you really want to stop and ask yourself, how can you specifically apply the principles in these real estate trainings in your own life and business? Because if not, today's episode may just turn out to be more meaningless than those parts of the periodic table that we memorized. All right, we're here today with Braxton Fears. And Braxton, now, a lot of people watching this, they'll probably go, this is the guy with that has the most incredible hair that an American man has ever had. But despite your hair, or I guess in addition to your hair quality, there are other things you do.
There are other things.
You have been a successful commercial real estate broker.
Yes.
You have worked in ministry. You have worked in the accounting profession. You have worked in the landscaping industry. You have done a lot of different things in your career, and you're basically at a point in your life where you don't really have a house payment. You're kind of this quasi-retired yuppie guy who lives in the woods, basically, right?
Yeah, kind of.
Okay. And so we're going to really drill down today and pick your brain about the 4 humans that are involved in every commercial real estate lease transaction. And if there's 5 humans too, we'll let you add some humans in here.
Okay.
But let's get into human number 1, the tenant.
Yes.
The tenant. We hear a lot. I know when I went to lease my first space, they said, what's the name of the tenant that will be leasing this building? And I'm going, what's the name of what does tenant mean? So what is it? Who is a tenant?
Yeah, the tenant is the business. If you're watching this, you're most likely going to be a tenant at some point, or you already are. A tenant is the business that moves into another person's building and occupies that space and pays rent.
So let's just make sure the tenant is usually the business.
That's correct.
So if my name of my company is called Clay LLC, the tenant is Clay LLC?
Yes.
Is the tenant Clay?
The tenant is Clay. If you're Clay LLC, that landlord or owner of the building is usually going to ask you, okay, Clay LLC, that's great, but it's really you're going to personally guarantee that lease.
So I have to personally guarantee this?
As that owner, most of the time.
Most of the time. And can you explain to me what a personal guarantee is, just so we can get into that?
That means even if you have a business, if you're the owner, and then you are personally responsible for it. So if you leave in the middle of the night, they're not just going to come after your business because that's going to do them no good. They're going to come after you, and they're going to ask you to, not ask you, they're going to make you pay part of all of the lease, and invariably you're going to get penalized for it.
And here's something I see all the time in business consulting. I see a lot of people that have either a degree or they've read a bunch of books about LLCs and legal, and they say, well, I'm going to just guarantee it with my company.
Right.
I don't want to personally guarantee it.
Yeah.
And they're like, I've read that's better. And you're like, well, that's great, but the landlord wants somebody to be accountable to pay for the building.
And if any landlord is smart, and most of them are, you're not going to come across somebody who's a dummy most of the time. They're going to make you do that.
So I just want to throw it out for you. If you had this mentality that you're going to form an LLC and just, because you've heard about it on some midnight infomercial, well, get an LLC and then just lease space with no liability. Any landlord with a functional mind would not let you do such a thing unless your company has such strong financials. Let's say Microsoft.
Yeah.
They might let Microsoft lease the building, but for the average entrepreneur, they're going to make you personally guarantee that.
That's correct.
Okay. Now, as a tenant, just getting into this here, what kind of rights does a tenant have? Once I lease the building, what kind of rights do I have?
Yeah, I mean, you've got lots of rights. The leases that are in place in every state, they're favorable for the tenant. You just got an interesting dynamic with your landlord. You're going to have a relationship with them, regardless of what type of lease it is. You're going to have a relationship with them, but you have the right to do what the use of that building is, and you have a right to have that space where they can't just come in whenever they want, unless you're in an office building. But you've got that's your space, and whenever, even if they sell that building, if you have a 5-year or a 3-year lease, they can't just kick you out, even though they've sold the building.
And I want to bring this up for a second because this is big. We're in a building here that you helped us find, and the landlord and I have a very good relationship. We might not get to agree on every single subject. Who does? But he's a great guy. And so if the landlord is over here and you're over here, so if this is the tenant and this is the landlord, starting off the deal here, if you guys don't agree with each other right away, I mean, if you just do not see eye to eye from the very beginning when you first interact with this person, is it a good idea to lease?
It's not a good idea, because even though you've got it on paper, that paper's worth about as much as what it is. It's paper, and yeah, there's some enforceable stuff on there, but nobody wants to go through the whole legal process of stuff. So having just a good personal relationship with your landlord, like you said, you don't have to be best buds, you don't have to invite them over to your house for coffee or whatever, but you do want to have a good working relationship. If there's a bind, they're going to treat you fairly. You guys are going to figure it out one way or the other, because there will be issues.